from the inkstand that is a replica of 1775 and 6. In here, delegates to a Continental Congress. Now, they do start out protesting to get their rights as loyal subjects. Early in 76, a printer in Philadelphia is the first man who printed up the pamphlet Common Sense, written by
Thomas Paine.
Thomas Paine, there we go. Main idea in it, you'd never get liberty as second-class citizens under a monarch 3,000 miles away. By middle of May, that pamphlet had sold so well, Congress realizes they've got popular support for the Big I Ward. That phrase was used. They get a whole number of committees going to figure out the nuts and bolts of achieving independence. One of the committees, pretty loaded. 5 people, including Ben Franklin, John Adams, and Thomas Jefferson, to write a declaration. Jefferson rents room space, drafts away at it, 17 days, end of June, first week in July. Here, Tuesday, vote to break away from Great Britain. Wednesday, as it had been a bit Monday, quite a bit the previous Friday, the declaration's debated. It's approved on Thursday, 4th of July. It's printed up Thursday night into Friday and distributed over the weekend. There are perhaps 200 to 300 copies in the first print run. This is not one of them, but it looks like it here. So it's sent out, it's put in newspapers and read to the public at the top. They all had the day July 4, even though the vote's 2 days before. These get out there, everything about independence tied to the day, but I have a thought that none of you would first up consider the Declaration of Independence being typeset. What you know it from would be the, okay, let's see, where did somebody, here we go. It's the handwriting of a clerk named Timothy Matlack. He's hired to produce a formal version signed in here the 2nd of August. That's in the National Archives. So if you're from around the District of Columbia, or I don't know, is the band, are you going to DC before you go home, or are you going straight back to Indiana? Okay. But if you ever get that, it's Mr. Matlack's writing. It was signed August, but it's dated the 4th of July, like the printed versions the public reviewing. And once this gets done, the next 12 years, the United States is practically 13 countries. Delaware had a navy, South Carolina had their own money. They agreed to run relations with European governments and the war effort as a group. When Ben Franklin arrives in Paris, mid-December 76, to get money and arms from the French and the Spanish, he's representing Congress of the United States. This arrangement ends up on a few pieces of paper that I'm thinking the students would have heard of by this point. The Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union. Turned out to be a little optimistic to be thinking the Confederation is going to be perpetual. It didn't just keep on going. Do any of the students know how the Confederation government had to raise money? You learned that yet? They couldn't tax. The state assemblies kept that power to themselves, thank you. They're elected, it made sense to them. The assemblies would then vote donation money to the Confederation government. They'd send in a little, not with the most enthusiasm, as long as there's this focus around, we're not going to get very far with this if we do not win the fighting first. we won the fighting. 1781. Peace treaty, early September 83. Bye-bye focus. The donation flow went with it. By 1786, 10th year anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, the Confederation government by then was meeting in Lower Manhattan, and they're broke. That's one reason, amongst a cluster of them, that back in here, well, by the end of May in 1787, a whole other group of delegates, and that's the group that puts together the same Constitution that's still used. A three-branch government made good sense, so they keep executive, judicial, legislative. Then it came down to power. Well, you start power with citizenry, and power gets delegated up to a government. When they looked in politics back to the Romans, much of the inheritance of the Judeo-Christian religious traditions, literature, George Washington had a noted appreciation of plays of William Shakespeare, history and tragedy plays, all of this. Find out what happens. Somebody decides they want a lot of power, they want it right now, and they'll get it now. They kill their relatives. They betray lifelong friendships. They get a troop together and they march it, boom, right into a capital city overnight. The point of all the power grabs. They inevitably happen fast, aggressively, and they occasionally end up in tragedy. And in contrast, all the way through United States history, under the whole process of checks and balances, the United States government can run exceedingly slow. This can just get frustrating as anything, but I go with an idea that if you vented to the men in here that summer, a consensus opinion back would be, thank you. You better hope that by balancing and checking powers in a government, you yield a working government out of the process that weeds out a decent percent of the abuses of power as it functions. Now, get the text set. Signed up here, September 17, 1787. George Washington's in that chair, in charge of the group that creates the job of president. He served as 2 years. Ben Franklin's out here somewhere, and Mr. Madison, who took notes, overheard Franklin just making a quip that he had often looked at the half sun on the chair and wondered if it was a rising or a setting sun, and at length had the happiness to call it a rising sun. So eventually it picks up that name, Rising Sun Chair. However, when one of our volunteers made this a couple of years ago, it makes it a whole lot easier to get to the idea. The chair was made in 1778 by and for patriots. 13 half rays topped by a liberty cap. So it all but begs to be the Rising Sun Chair. Now, lastly, and there we go. Briefly, back to that Lafayette return visit. Amongst his entourage was a woman from Scotland named Frances Wright, W-R-I-G-H-T. She's going around and giving public lectures, suggesting it might be good if someday in the United States women got the right to vote. Now, boy, in 1824-25 America, that's a huge wow for anybody to be suggesting such a thing. It takes darn near 100 years to get the change through, but it does get to the point that we've always had a tension in United States history between thinking we've got a government structured enough to work and having individuals or groups take a look at the powerful ideas in the first couple paragraphs of the text we're founded on. All men are created equal, we the people. Now, wait a second here. I or we feel we do not have full participation now, right here. They often agitate and then will think out how to use the constitutional structure of the government to get to the legal access to the liberties, and all these go back to the text that were signed in here, hence the idea it is the room the United States starts in. Now, any questions in here? Yeah, let's go.
What is that above the scroll where we get that crescent there?
Okay, yeah, the silver crest up there is the crest of the Penn family. So that makes sense. And I mentioned about 70% of the wood in the building's original. This is most of the missing 30. Human nature in meeting and bureaucracy, here it comes. When the city's in the process of buying the place from the Commonwealth Assembly, somebody on city council in 1815 had a great idea. They used the word modernize. Oops. Let's get rid of this old-fashioned Georgian-style wooden plaster. So this is all 4th and 5th generation wooden plaster to get this room back to the way it initially looked. The only thing that made it, it's officially the cockle shell frieze. Unofficially, it's a very nicely carved clamshell. It's fancy enough, it's always been popped out and put back. In contrast, almost everything in the hall is original. Building made it, just not the room everybody wants to come look at. There's fate for you. Sometimes there's all kinds of twists. Okay, anything else? Or? Okay, well, thanks for your time. Have a good rest of the day out there, and just turn around out to the left and